Torrents of rain lashed the city as Detective Ricardo, his coat soaked, observed the scene. A lifeless body, floating in mid-air, inside an antique shop. A mysterious glow emanated from the corpse, and the air was heavy, charged with a bone-chilling cold, even in the midst of the storm. Ricardo, a man of science and reason, felt a different kind of shiver, a profound fear he couldn't explain. Was it black magic, or something far worse? Luna the witch, his ally as enigmatic as she was powerful, was absent, and he was alone, lost in a labyrinth of mystery and shadows, facing a supernatural power that seemed to defy all the laws of nature. What happened here? And more importantly, who was capable of doing this? The rain beat heavily against the windows of the police station, mimicking the anxious drumming of Ricardo's heart. He sat at his old, dark wooden desk, the crime scene report open in front of him, but his eyes couldn't focus on the words. The image of the floating body, surrounded by a mysterious and terrifying glow, haunted him. It was as if the antique shop, usually so full of silent stories, now whispered horrifying secrets directly into his mind. He had never seen anything like it in his long years as a detective, not even on the dark and dangerous streets of Rio, or in the shadowy alleys of Los Angeles. Ricardo rubbed his eyes, tired, but the image wouldn't disappear. The victim, Mr. Silas, the shop owner, a kind man who always greeted him with a smile and hot tea, floating like a feather in the wind. Impossible. He, Ricardo, a practical man, accustomed to dealing with weapons, drugs, and criminals, was confronted with something completely beyond his comprehension. Something magical, supernatural. Or was it a weapon even more sophisticated than he could imagine? A phone call broke through his thoughts. It was Inspector Anna, his partner, a strong and perceptive woman, who, despite initially being skeptical of Luna's abilities, had witnessed too many strange things to dismiss the possibility of a world beyond what her eyes could see. Her voice, even through the phone, carried a palpable tension. Ricardo, we've found something in Silas's pocket. A small amulet, silver, with strange symbols engraved on it. It looks ancient. Her voice faltered for a moment. And believe it or not, the amulet is pulsating with a faint light, even now here at the station. Ricardo felt a knot in his throat. With each new discovery, the mystery became even more complex and terrifying. The amulet. Luna. She was the only one who could help him understand the meaning of it, to decipher the enigma of this strange and terrifying death. But she was missing. He had called her home, her cell phone. Nothing. Her absence was unsettling, as mysterious as Mr. Silas's death. He thought about the events of the past few months, since his first meeting with Luna, since the first paranormal cases that seemed to have come straight out of the pages of a horror storybook. The encounters with shadowy creatures, with beings from other dimensions, and the chases through the dark alleys of the city had transformed his life into a continuous tale of suspense and mystery. But something had changed. Before, it was the search for the truth, the need to explain the inexplicable through logic and science. Now it was a fight for survival. Ricardo didn't know if he was fighting supernatural evil or the consequences of getting involved in something far bigger than himself. He grabbed his coat, even with the rain still falling outside. He needed to find Luna. That amulet, the strange symbols, the mysterious glow. Everything indicated that this was beyond his field of expertise, and Luna's absence left him vulnerable. He needed the witch's help to decipher the mystery of Silas's death, and more importantly, to find out who had murdered him in such a bizarre and terrifying way. The rain now seemed torrential, as if the sky itself were weeping for Silas's soul, and the terrifying uncertainty that filled Ricardo's heart. He needed to find Luna before it was too late, before another victim fell under the fury of this unknown, implacable, and mysterious power. Fear gnawed at him, a cold, heavy fear that mingled with the searing feeling of loneliness and helplessness. The city outside was dark and dangerous, but even more dangerous was the void Luna had left, a void that left him at the mercy of the unknown. The game had changed, and now he no longer knew who the players were, or who was next in the sights of this terrible and supernatural power. The rain stubbornly continued to fall, a curtain of water that obscured the city and reflected the confusion in Ricardo's mind. The amulet pulsed, a faint and sinister light in the darkness of the station, like a weak heart about to stop. Each beat was a warning, a whisper of danger echoing in the silence between the raindrops. Anna, his partner, watched the object with a mixture of fascination and fear, her brown eyes wide as if she were about to see a ghost. She had never seen anything like it. Neither had Ricardo. The phone rang again, the shrill sound cutting through the tense silence. It was an unknown contact, a hoarse and distorted voice, almost inaudible through the sounds of the storm. The voice whispered dark threats, references to Silas, to the amulet, and a bizarre request. Hand over the amulet, or the next soul to float will be yours. The phone was disconnected before Ricardo could respond, leaving a silence even heavier than before, a silence charged with threat. The fear, once a chill down his spine, turned into a knot in Ricardo's throat. He imagined Luna facing something similar, the unknown power they were fighting against, manifesting itself more aggressively. Her absence was more than worrying. It was a clear sign that the danger was closer and stronger than ever. Silas had been just a pawn, a warning. Ricardo looked at the amulet, at the faintly pulsating light, a small flame of hope in the immense darkness that was approaching. He knew he couldn't hand over that mysterious object, not to those who threatened him. He remembered Luna's stories about the ancestral secrets she protected, about the ancient and dangerous power that existed between the two worlds. This amulet was a key to a larger mystery, a key that could both open him to unimaginable danger and protect him from it. He remembered Silas's kind smile, the warmth of his tea, and a deep rage filled him. Silas didn't deserve to die like that, without even having a chance to understand what was happening. The image of the floating body invaded his mind, along with the image of the torrential rain over the antique shop. It was a bizarre scene, a scene that didn't fit into his detective's logic, but that was becoming increasingly real, more menacing. Ricardo knew he needed to act fast. He had to find Luna, even without knowing where she was. He had to understand the meaning of the symbols engraved on the amulet, which seemed to pulsate in sync with his own racing heart. Anna, realizing the gravity of the situation, offered support. Together, they would try to decipher the symbols, investigate who had made the call, look for any clue that would lead them to Luna. The rain continued, like a suspenseful soundtrack to their search. The police station, once a symbol of order and security, seemed like a horror movie set, with the amulet pulsating like a silent threat, and the silent phone, witness to a conversation that could seal Ricardo's fate. He knew he was in a race against time, a race against an invisible and implacable enemy, an enemy who possessed supernatural powers and an incomparable capacity for terror. Survival, now, depended not only on his intelligence and detective skills, but also on his ability to navigate this sea of supernatural mystery, and, above all, to find Luna again, the witch who was his only hope in a world on the brink of chaos. The game had only just begun, and the price of defeat was death. The rain fell like tears from the sky, as Detective Ricardo, soaked to the bone, felt a chill that came from within, far more icy than the storm outside. The image of Mr. Silas, floating in the antique shop like a ghost, haunted him. That mysterious glow, the feeling of an evil power hovering in the air. It was something he had never experienced, even in his years investigating the darkest and most dangerous cases. Inspector Anna, her voice trembling on the phone, confirmed his worst fears. A silver amulet, with strange ancient symbols, found in Silas's pocket, pulsed with a faint light at the station, like a heart about to burst. Luna, the only one who could explain all of that, was missing. Fear tightened Ricardo's chest. He felt lost in a sea of mystery, where logic and reason seemed useless. Each clue led him to a new enigma, to a new level of horror. The amulet was the key. He felt it. But the door it opened was the door to the unknown, to a world of shadows and supernatural powers that defied any explanation. The anonymous call, a hoarse and menacing voice whispering about the amulet and the next victim, reinforced the terror that consumed him. The voice cut through the silence of the station like a sharp knife, hitting Ricardo squarely. It was no longer an investigation. It was a fight for survival, a race against time to unravel a malevolent plan before anyone else died. Ricardo remembered Luna's words, the ancestral secrets, the dangers that existed between two worlds. She had told him stories of black magic, of shadowy entities, and of an ancestral power that threatened our world. And now, all of that seemed to materialize before his eyes, becoming a terrifying reality. He rushed to the car, the rain lashing his face, as Anna followed him, her eyes fixed on the amulet that pulsed in her hands. Silas's mystery was linked to Luna's absence and the threat of the anonymous call. It was a complex web, a diabolical enigma where each thread led to a new terror. The search for Luna led them through the dark alleys of the city, under a relentless rain that reflected the storm in their hearts. They found clues, traces of the witch that seemed to lead to an unexpected place. An old cemetery, lost among the concrete jungle. In the cemetery, a thick and mysterious fog covered the ancient tombstones. The air was heavy, charged with a supernatural energy. Ricardo and Anna walked cautiously among the graves, fear mixed with determination. Suddenly they heard a scream. Luna's scream. They found her surrounded by shadowy figures, grotesque and terrifying entities that seemed to emerge from the shadows themselves. Luna was fighting, her magical powers shining in the darkness, but her exhaustion was visible. She was injured, and they realized they were seconds away from her fall. The battle was intense, a fight between magic and terror, between light and darkness. Ricardo, even without any supernatural power, fought alongside Luna, protecting her while she defended them all against those monstrous creatures. He used his intelligence, his physical strength, and his experience in police investigation to help the witch fight the beings from beyond. Anna, using her police training, protected the rear, looking for any opening in the midst of the chaos. At the height of the battle, Ricardo had an epiphany. The symbols on the amulet were not random. They were a code, a map to the heart of the evil power that had killed Silas and was now ready to attack them. He realized the location of the ritual, which was not in a physical place, but in a supernatural one. It was a portal between worlds. With Luna's help, they managed to close the portal, freeing themselves from those terrible creatures. The rain stopped, suddenly. A strange and inexplicable silence fell upon them. The air seemed lighter, purified. But Luna was exhausted, her supernatural power depleted. The amulet, now without pulsation, seemed to have lost its sinister force. Silas's mystery was finally solved. The amulet was a key to an evil ritual, and the killer, a follower of black magic who sought ancestral power. He had used the amulet to open a portal and bring entities from another world into this world to perform the ritualistic murder. Ricardo, embracing Luna, felt relief and gratitude. They had survived, but the price was high. The city, minutes before immersed in the storm, was now illuminated by a sudden sun. And in the silence that followed, Ricardo knew that his journey was far from over. The line between two worlds was thin, and they would continue to patrol that line, protecting our world from the dark forces that threatened to destroy everything. The battle was over for now, but the war was not yet over. The rain finally stopped, leaving behind an almost frightening silence, broken only by the sound of Luna's gasping breath and the racing beat of Ricardo's heart. They had won for now. The shadowy creatures dissipated like smoke, returning to the abyss from which they came, leaving behind only the heavy silence and the memory of the brutal battle. The amulet, once pulsating and menacing, now lay inert in Ricardo's hand, its inner light extinguished. Silas was avenged, at least in part. Ricardo knew that the death of the antique shop owner had been a ritual, a horrendous act of black magic to open a portal to a parallel world. A world of unimaginable darkness and horrors. Luna, pale and exhausted, leaned against an ancient tomb, her breath ragged. The effort to seal the portal had drained her energy, leaving her weak and vulnerable. Ricardo felt a wave of tenderness and admiration for that courageous and mysterious woman who had faced terrible monsters to protect him in the city. He knew that it wasn't just an investigative partner who was by his side, but a friend and an ally against an invisible and implacable enemy. The feeling of relief mixed with physical exhaustion embraced them like a blanket. The rain stopped. The sky opened in an intense and almost unreal blue, a brutal contrast to the previous minutes. But there was something wrong in that sudden silence, something unsettling in the blue of the sky, almost a cruel irony. Anna, still shaken by the experience, examined the area around, looking for clues from the cult that had summoned the creatures of the shadows. She muttered, analyzing something on the ground. Her eyes focused, a mixture of concern and determination. She found something. A piece of parchment, wet from the rain, but still legible. They were ancient symbols, much more complex than those on the amulet. Symbols that seemed to whisper in an unknown language. The sinister promise of an even greater power, much more dangerous than they had faced in that cemetery. As Ricardo examined the symbols, something caught his attention. A drawing, a kind of map, detailed and precise, but one he couldn't decipher. He then realized that the symbols and the map did not refer to a finished ritual, but to a ritual still in progress. A much greater threat, on a much larger scale than he could imagine. Luna, catching her breath, analyzed the parchment with him, her penetrating gaze fixed on the minute details of the map. Fear froze Ricardo's blood. It wasn't just a black magic cult, it was something much larger, an ancient and powerful organization, with complex and unimaginable rituals, and an incredibly extensive reach. They had defeated a small group, but the threat was gigantic, like an iceberg whose tip was only a sliver of something much larger, and much worse. Suddenly, the silence was interrupted by a distant roar, a vibration that shook the earth beneath their feet. A powerful, sinister energy hovered over them, emanating from a specific point within the cemetery, a point not marked on any map, not even the one they were analyzing at that moment. It was a sign, a sinister warning, a warning that evil had not been defeated, only slumbering. The ancient and malevolent power was still out there, waiting for the right moment to manifest itself, with all its fury. And worse, they had no idea what that power was capable of. Ricardo and Luna exchanged a look, fear reflected in their eyes. They had faced the supernatural, but now they found themselves facing something much greater, much more menacing than any creature or ritual they had ever faced. A power that seemed to echo through the dimensions, an ancient power that had the ambition to consume the world, a power that challenged their limits, that struck them to the very core of their being. They knew that the fight had only just begun, and that the next battle could be their last. The roar intensified, closer now, and an immense shadow stretched over them, obscuring the suddenly clear and blue sky. A shadow that hid a much greater, much worse, much more powerful threat than anything they had ever faced. The shadow of a new horror, the shadow of the true enemy, the shadow of an uncertain and terrifying future.